Geek Out! You wanted the best, and you got me instead. That's right, it's another episode of Kiss, my podcast. We're in the 80s now. We're no longer in the 70s, man. So we're jumping right into this. We're talking about Unmasked. We're bringing back another Kiss expert who talked to us earlier. Of course, it's my brother Mick. Thanks so much for coming back on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Glad to be here to talk about the greatest band ever.
That's right, dude. So yeah, I mean, again, you know, the 70s is over. You know, we're now in 1980s era Kiss. Love it or hate it. It gets a little bumpy from here for a while. And it's, you know, this album, as we go through, and you know, obviously, you know, you were listening to it, I was listening to it to get back in touch. It's not a horrible album, but you know, there's definitely some weak spots on here. But there's also some really, I think, some pretty good bright spots as well.
Yeah.
But real quick, before we even jump into any of the other stuff, do you remember how you bought this album? Like how we went about getting this?
I don't remember like exactly where we bought it from. I just remember when I got it, and I was like, for some reason, I felt like I was the only person in the world who had this album, just because I had been studying Kiss and seeing all their album covers and everything, and I just remember seeing the Unmasked album cover and being like, I need to own that immediately.
Yeah, I remember. I feel like we were at like some like family outing, like it was a weekend or we were at the mall or something, and we went to, you know, FYE, Sam Goody, whatever it was back then, and, you know, the fact that you were able to find Unmasked at like a big chain music store to this day still blows my mind.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nowadays, if you go to a Best Buy, you're probably just going to find like the great, you know, Kiss's greatest hits, like 4 or 5 copies of that. And so for the fact that, you know, even back then, you know, you'd find like, you know, Destroyer here or there, but the fact that you were able to find like an unremastered, you know, original copy, not used, of Unmasked is crazy. Like, I want to know the guy that ordered that for the store. You know what I mean? Like, they were probably like, "Why did you do that?" And then, of course, you bought it, and he probably looked like a freaking genius.
Yeah, I was gonna say that guy probably got raised just for selling this one.
Yeah, you sold Unmasked, but yeah, I remember. Yeah, you were like super psyched, and like, you know, I had, you know, obviously, you know, was big into Kiss back then too, and I, you know, this is really before, you know, iTunes and all the internet stuff, so I really didn't know much of the tracks on Unmasked. The only track I knew was Two Sides of the Coin because it was on one of the greatest hits albums. I had never heard any of the other tracks before. And so this was cool. This was kind of the cool moment where like the student becomes the teacher. Like you were teaching me about Kiss with Unmasked.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I always thought that was funny that you're able to find that because there's no way you'd be able to find that album now. Like it got remastered, but still, I doubt you'd be able to find that at any kind of big chain music store.
Yeah, maybe if we were in like Australia, we'd be able to find it.
Yeah,
they apparently love this album.
Yeah, I mean, like they're, you know, outside of the U.S., some of the singles did really well.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's just the genre or what it is, but you know, I don't know. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into this real quick. What have you been, anything crazy been up to since last time you've been on the show?
Nothing too crazy. I think I can't remember when. The last time we did, I think it was like early June, maybe.
Yeah, it's rock and roll over.
Yeah. So, I mean, not related to Kiss, but the Cleveland Cavaliers won the NBA championship, so that's kind of been...
That's right, yeah.
The centerfold of my life since that occurred.
I was trying to remember when I was driving over here, like, if that had happened already, but for anyone who doesn't know, who listens to this, with the amount of like fervor that I love, like Superman, if you listen to the Catching Up show, the Geek Out show, Mick here loves LeBron James that much and more. And so, you know, it was a big one to see. You know, I think because your love of LeBron James is so you know, massive that it rubs off on me a little bit. So like I definitely was pulling for LeBron. And I was also definitely pulling for Cleveland, you know, because like that you know that's a great sports town, but they haven't had anything in decades, you know.
Oh yeah, if you ever do a podcast on Cleveland sports or the Cavaliers in general, I'm all down for it.
You should jump on the LeBron James thing, dude. Get that podcast going, and who knows, in 100 or so episodes, you get the king on there himself. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was really cool to see, and it was one of those moments where I think even more so than like him winning in Miami twice, to see, this hometown kid bring it home for, his hometown, more or less. Like, even I think the biggest LeBron haters, aside from Skip Bayless, like, couldn't help but like smile at that.
Yeah, definitely something that you would think you would only see in a movie.
Yeah, no, really.
Something like that happens.
For him to go, to leave Cleveland in not the best way possible, and have, jerseys burning and the owner writing that ridiculous letter, and then him to come out and come back and be the hero and make good on that promise to, bring a championship. That's pretty sweet, man. Like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's been it. We've obviously gone through, 4 years of Kiss albums since you last been on, Mick. Talking about last album was Dynasty, which is weird because like Dynasty actually had a couple. I actually liked listening to it more this most recent time than I ever have before. I don't know if it's because I've been in such Kiss mode more than I ever have since like middle school doing this podcast, but I like the album a little bit more than I remember. Do you remember anything about the Dynasty or anything off the top of your head?
Honestly, I remember listening to it, when I was first getting into Kiss, but I haven't listened to Dynasty probably in a few years. So.
Yeah. It's known it's known for the big "I Was Made for Loving You" and "Sure Knows Something." Yeah. The big Kiss Go tracks, which I think kind of bleeds over a bit into this album, and we'll get there. Yeah. But so I don't know, and I think Unmasked. I think I warmed to it a little bit more listening to it because it's been a while since I listened to the album. Like I've only listened to it, like certain tracks here and there, but to sit down and listen to the album front to back to front, you get a little more respect for the album. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump in. I'll knock out all the album notes here. Feel free to chip in if you got anything else you want to add. But released May 20th, 1980. Recorded from January to March 1980 at the Record Plant Studios in New York, New York. Again, like always, you've said it a million times, Kiss is a New York band through and through. Produced by Vinny Poncia, who worked on Dynasty heavily, helped produce that as well, and co-wrote a buttload of songs on this album. You're going to hear his name a lot on this podcast. Also a big guy in the 70s to help write a bunch of stuff with Ringo Starr and produce some of his albums. 3 singles from this. The first one's Shandy, June 1st, 1980. Talk to Me, August 24th, 1980, and Tomorrow, November 1st, 1980. Of course, we'll dive more into those as we get to the single track-by-track stuff. We've kind of been, not even teasing, but talking about Peter Criss and his involvement in Kiss the past couple albums, ever since Love Gun, really, about it being the beginning of the end. And unfortunately, this is it, man. This is the end. This is the last stop for Peter Criss until 1995 with Kiss. On this album, he doesn't play, sing, or write a note on this album. On Dynasty, at least he played on one track and did some backing vocal stuff. But again, we got as I like to call it, the sacred uncredited. Anton Fig comes in and drums the entire album, does a fantastic job. But Peter, unfortunately, is in name only and face only on this. His last appearance with the band is in the video for Shandy. It's the last time again he's going to appear with Kiss until a convention in 1995. Excuse me. That would be the catalyst for getting the reunion tour and the reunion in the first phase back together. A year after the tour, Peter was fired, and again the album itself was the first not to reach platinum since Destroyer. So that's a 4-year run of albums that reached platinum, and Unmasked is kind of the beginning of a really, really, at least Dynasty had some big hits. This album here is it's the beginning of a real kind of rough patch for Kiss, unfortunately. But like I said, even on the weakest album, there's always some bright notes here and there, and we'll definitely get to those. The album cover that, of course, Mick was talking about earlier, which I think is such a great. I wouldn't call it iconic, because it's not on any kind of list, but like I think it's just it grabs you because it's basically a page of a comic book as a cover. So you get the classic. If anyone hasn't seen it, you get the band basically taking their masks off to reveal that their faces underneath look like that all along. They got the classic Demon, Starchild, Spaceman, and Catman makeup. I remember like Gene takes it off and his tongue's like flying everywhere with blood and everything. And the art was done by Victor Stabin, who it was a painter and a very well-regarded artist in his own right. Probably known most for the Kiss stuff, especially in the rock community. But like you were saying, though, like you said that this cover definitely grabbed you more than most. You said. Yeah.
Well, like you were saying, I've been a fan of I got to say, you know, I'm a big fan of the Destroyer album cover.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, like like an album cover like Dress to Kill, like that's a cool picture. You know, they're in their makeup, they're in suits, they're in the middle of New York City. But when they do these album covers with, you know, whether it's a comic book strip or just a painting, you know, I think that's when they can really bring Kiss to life as like how Kiss sees themselves.
Yeah.
You know, with all the blood and just larger than life. And you know, just the Unmasked. I think it's just a cool concept.
Yeah.
To have the comic book strip on it.
Yeah, and you know the art's great by Victor, and you know it's funny because there's only 2 albums after this, and then they really do go unmasked. You know, with Lick It Up. But let's jump in, man. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I got one more thing I wanted to say here. Just a couple of fun notes, actually, before we jump in. Kiss would play one show at the Palladium to introduce their new drummer, the Fox Eric Carr, during this time, which is really exciting for me and most Kiss fans because I think he's a very well-beloved member of Kiss. He's a guy that changed his name to even have the same sounding syllables. So like Peter Criss, Eric Carr is just, you know, those each one is just the one syllable, so his name would fit perfectly in the band. It wouldn't sound weird. He was a huge Kiss fan before being in Kiss. A super great guy, a great drummer. Again, there's really nothing to talk about on this album with him because he doesn't play on it, but it's exciting that we're entering the era of the Fox. I think his makeup was always kind of cool. I wish he wore a little more, but I think he's one of the all-time great members of Kiss. Excuse me. And then also, kind of a cool thing, one of the opening acts for Kiss during the Unmasked tour was a little-known European band at the time called Iron Maiden. Now, of course, Iron Maiden would go on still to this day. I mean, massive fame. You know, huge. One of the biggest metal bands of all time. Helped really enter the era of the new wave of British heavy metal, along with like Merciful Fate, Judas Priest, that would go on to inspire Metallica, and of course Anthrax, Slayer, Pantera, all those guys. Mick, I know that, you know, growing up you had 2 posters I remember distinctly in your room. One was Jessica Simpson on a Rolling Stone cover. Of course. The other was the front cover to Killers by Iron Maiden. What do you got? Anything to say about Iron Maiden? Favorite song, favorite album, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think at that time, you know, I was obviously big into Kiss, big into Metallica, big into Pantera, and then, you know, Iron Maiden was just. I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert on Iron Maiden or anything like that. I was, you know, their artwork and some of their songs I was just huge fans of. I remember I had the you know, Run to the Hills was like my favorite song by them. And I had that shirt that had the album artwork on the back of it.
Oh yeah, with the Eddie with the demon head and stuff.
Yeah, and I could have sworn I was the coolest kid in school wearing that shirt around.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, Maiden still to this day they're putting out great work. You know, Bruce Dickinson had throat cancer and he's all better now. And they released a double album, Book of Souls, which is amazing. They went on this huge world tour recently. You know, Bruce Dickinson is not only the lead singer but also the guy that flies their plane, Ed Force One, all around. So I mean, like they're still just as big as they ever were, and it's kind of cool that. You know, they really, I wouldn't say got their start, but got taken on the road by Kiss. And supposedly Kiss, during, you know, the final show, jumped out on stage with a bunch of congratulatory cake and threw it all over the band. And they supposedly got along pretty well, which is cool because I love Kiss and I love Iron Maiden. So I think that's a cool little thing. Also, real quick, speaking of Metallica, did you happen to hear their new song, Mick?
No, I think you posted something about it, but
yeah.
I haven't listened to it yet.
You got to check it out, man. It's the music side of it is fucking awesome. Like, it's just super heavy, double bass, a lot of thrash, a lot of changing riffs. James's vocals are solid. It's not my favorite like lyrics, you know, but I'm really looking forward to the album. I think it's November 8th is when it comes out. It's called Hardwired ... to Self-Destruct, and the song is called Hardwired. So they released a music video for it, which is them in like strobe lights just fucking going crazy and Lars being a psychopath. So yeah, definitely check that out, man. And if anyone listening hasn't checked it out, again, check it out. Hardwired, the new Metallica track sounds awesome, and I can't wait to hear that and talk about that. Probably on Geek Out when it comes out, because I'm definitely gonna be reviewing that one. But anyway, enough talk about all this other crap. Let's jump in the Kiss, man. So we get the first track called "Is That You," written by Gerard McMahon and sung by Paul Stanley. I think it's a great album opener. You get Paul going like the yow, and they kick right into the, I mean, they kick in kind of like full force, but I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I feel like this album though kind of sounds like thin. Doesn't have as much bite as it could have had to it.
Yeah, I'd agree. But I think at the time, and diving into kind of the relationship with, it was almost like Peter Criss and Ace, were kind of on one side, and Gene and Paul were on another with how they saw the album going. And I think just Gene and Paul had more pull in regards to, I guess, the sound of how the album was going to be. And so I think that's why, like, you see that with the tracks in this album.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's still, I've said it a million times, it still has that super bitchy Paul Stanley quality, which is a compliment, and I actually really like the song a lot. Like, it's one of my favorite songs in the album. Again, Kiss knows how to do an album opener, but I think there's just a little thing in the back of my mind every time I hear it where I'm like, again, and even Paul Stanley, I think, said, like, a lot of the songs started off heavier and they kind of got a little more thin and not as in your face. Kiss has a lot of outside help on this. When I'm going through this and I'm going to be saying who's writing what and all the different tracks, you're going to hear a lot of co-written stuff. And Kiss for the longest time, not for the longest time, but they got away from that and they were back to just being kind of the four-piece writing for themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with having outside help, but I feel like they're kind of regressing in that sense. And, this is kind of the start of that. But, overall, Paul Stanley plays lead guitar on it, which is cool. You're going to hear us talk about Paul Stanley playing a lot of lead on this song, on this album. But I don't know. I've always liked this song a lot. And I just think it's just a super catchy, kind of fun rock and roll song.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that it's catchy. The lyrics are interesting if you actually go through and read them.
Yeah.
But definitely an interesting song for sure.
Remember when Paul's like, "Is that you looking half past dead?" And like he just like,
yeah,
like just I don't know. I love when Paul goes just full bitchy vocals. It's my favorite thing in the world. But the next track I know is special for you, Mick, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's called Shandy, and it's written by Paul and Vinnie Poncia, sung by Paul. This is actually inspired by the Hollies cover of 4th of July Asbury Park, parentheses Sandy, which is a song written by the boss Bruce Springsteen, which is a fantastic song. If you've never heard it, check it out. Again, you're going to hear us say catchy a lot on this one because it's a super catchy album. I think that's what helps a lot of people like it a little more, is the fact that there is some big choruses to it. You get a nice little intro from Anton on the drums. Again, Anton Fig being that beast that steps in to play drums for Kiss, uncredited, of course. I think it's a good pop song. I don't think it's what most Kiss fans were expecting to hear when they put this album on. Again, Paul plays lead, and a guy by the name of Tom Harper plays bass on this track, not Gene. Gene's actually kind of missing a lot on this album. We'll get to talk about that more as we get further into it. But I know, Mick, Shandy is a favorite of yours, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, when I had my first car, my Dodge Challenger, I was like, I gotta have a name for my car, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's not cool unless I have a name for my car. So,
yeah.
Most people would be like, oh, well, you're probably going to choose Beth to be the name for your car. Well, I would always listen to Unmasked, just when I was cruising around and stuff. And Shandy would come on and I was like, yeah, I really like this song. I think I'm going to name my Challenger Shandy.
Yeah.
So people always used to ask me, hey, you got a name for your car? And I'm like, yeah, it's Shandy. And they're like, what the hell is Shandy?
Yeah. Then you just throw a copy of Unmasked in their hands and like, what the hell is this? But yeah, no, I whenever I hear Shandy now, I think of that old car of yours.
Yeah. Well, so I know you mentioned about Gene not playing bass on this, so which I had no idea about. And I was reading some stuff on the album today, and really, it's only in the entire song, it's only Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
you got Tom Harper on bass, Holly Knight on keyboards, and then and Fig obviously playing drums.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that, and I'm kind of like, well, crap. That's one of my favorite Kiss songs, and my favorite Kiss member is playing on it.
Well, I mean, at least he learned the stuff to play it live, I guess.
Yeah. But apparently, so I got this thing that from that Kiss box set that I got.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because that's a super awesome wealth of information to have. Because I wish I had that.
Oh yeah. But Paul was talking about, because like you said, this is the first single from the album.
Yeah.
And it actually did pretty well. Not so much in the United States. This album didn't do well.
Yeah.
But in places like Australia and the Netherlands, it did very well, and across Europe. But this was one of the top tracks in Australia when it came out, and so they were saying actually when Kiss does their concerts in Australia, they typically don't play anything from Unmasked ever.
Yeah.
But when they go to Australia, they always play Shandy because they said the people love it there. But Paul was saying in here, he said that he initially wrote it on an acoustic 12-string.
Uh-huh.
But he said during that time, they polished and neutered songs to the point where it took away from the heart of the song. So I mean, I would, it'd be interesting to see what like the initial one sounded like. But even with the way it is now, like I think Shandy is a great song and super catchy.
Yeah, I mean it's a super catchy song, and this album proves Paul Stanley can write outside of Kiss, because like a lot of these songs you wouldn't consider Kiss songs, and like he supposedly still plays Shandy, like you were saying, obviously in Australia, which is cool that they can have these kind of special set lists for certain countries. But like he plays it, I guess, sometimes on his, like when you do solo tours and stuff like that. But I mean, he knows how to write good pop music, you know what I mean? And he also obviously knows how to write great kick-ass Kiss music too. But Shandy's like, it would have been interesting to see like how the song would have been responded to if it was released as like a solo track, not a Kiss track. But I'm with you, man. I think these first two tracks are catchy and some of the brighter spots on Unmasked.
Yep.
But yeah, like you said, the rest of the bands, it's basically a solo track because like you were saying, the only member of Kiss on it is Paul. Ace doesn't play lead, Gene's not playing bass, and Peter Criss is definitely not playing drums. But again, two in terms of Unmasked, two really solid tracks from Paul right outside the gate. But the next one we get is a song called Talk to Me by Ace, sung by Ace. So 100% by Ace Frehley. I love every Ace Frehley track on this album. Like he has 3. This is probably my third favorite of them, but it's I love it just the same. He plays bass on this track. Supposedly him and Gene did not get along at all during this album, and so every track that the 2 other tracks after this we'll talk about that are Ace's, he plays bass on as well. I just think it's so great, as we've kind of talked album to album here, that he's just really become confident. Even though his time at Kiss is coming to an end, unfortunately, he's become just this kind of really confident lead singer and songwriter, which he's been since day one. I think it's a solid Kiss track, like I was saying. But I don't know. I think there's just something missing as well. It still doesn't have like that full crunch from Ace on it. I think there's a song later on. There's 2 songs that from him later on that have a little more of that crunch, but there's just, again, it's just like you were saying, they're kind of neutered and, overproduced to the point of it not having that Kiss kind of kick ass in your face, punch to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was listening to the album this morning, driving into work, and we'll get into some tracks later on the album that I think are very catchy. But it was weird because I came inside and I ate dinner, was kind of just moping around the house, and the one song that was stuck in my head was "Talk to Me," which I thought was super strange.
That is.
But I was reading again in that the Kiss box set that I got.
Yeah.
So they have a live version of "Talk to Me" as part of one of these CDs, and it was recorded in Australia. But this isn't really related too much to the song, but it was just interesting going back to Eric Carr and the positive things that came from this album that I think sometimes get overshadowed.
Yeah.
And so this is something that Gene said. So he's just talking about, you know, how Kiss was touring Australia in the 1980s. And obviously Peter wasn't part of the band anymore, so they had Eric Carr, the Fox. And Gene said, having Eric Carr in the band was like seeing a brand new Kiss through his eyes. He said every time his eyes widened, we saw the magic again.
Yeah.
It's true that one often tends to take things for granted, but certainly Eric Carr made things come alive for us in ways that we had forgotten. I just think that's awesome. You know, you got this band that's had platinum albums, it's got all this fame, it's known worldwide. And you know, granted, you know, as a Kiss fan, and you know, seeing Peter Criss go sucks. But at the same time, like, you know, they got a great replacement in Eric Carr, and he kind of revitalized Kiss in a way. So I just thought that was interesting. That's just one of those things that, you know, this album, you know, it kind of indirectly influenced with the new band member.
Yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough how important, like you were saying, you know, Eric Carr coming to the band is, because you know, it's the dream job for this guy. I mean, he's the guy that is their drummer for the 80s. You know, the next album is clearly not their best album, but it's got Eric Carr on it, and the album after that, it's got, you know, Eric Carr on it, and like I love the guy so much, and it's so unfortunate that he's not around with us anymore. You know, he passed away the same day as Freddie Mercury, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, and that's something that in the Paul and Gene book, you know, they talk very fondly about Eric, and you know, just totally devastated when he passed away. But he's the guy that, like, you know, I think every time you listen to a song with Eric Carr on it, especially when he's playing, you know, a quote unquote classic Kiss era song, he has this just fucking rock and roll. He hits the drums like a rock and roll drummer does. You know?
Yeah.
If you guys have ever watched or listened to the Kissology Volume 2, where Eric Carr plays the album the opener to one of the concerts, it might be to Australia, is Detroit Rock City, and he adds like a double kick to it. And again, you know, Kiss has never been a metal band to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean adding a double kick makes them metal, but it gives them this kind of like total new rock sound that they've never had before. And he was such a good drummer. And then also Paul does a cool like vocal line with Detroit Rock City as well. And also, like I said, I loved his makeup. You know, like the Fox. Yeah. The Fox just looked cool. Again, like you said, you hit it perfectly with the Gene quote, man. Like, the best thing to come out of this album is unfortunately losing Peter, but you know, they gained you know, Eric Carr in the off season. And that's funny, man. That's hilarious to me. Like, I would have never guessed that "Talk to Me" would be the track that stuck in your head, but
right.
Power to Ace, man. The next track is a song I would figure would be stuck in your head, because this song's like insanely catchy. It's "Naked City," of course, written by Gene, Vinnie Poncia, Bob Kulick. Of course, his brother Bruce Kulick will be in the band in the 80s. Both of those guys, big members of the Kiss Army, and Pepe Castro wrote it as well with him. Sung by Gene. I love this song, man. Like, you know, it's not on the Mount Rushmore of Kiss classic songs. I think Gene's vocals are really strong on it, though. And it's just seriously like one of my favorite songs on the album. Maybe even my favorite. It was second only to a certain Ace song we'll talk about later. The funny thing is, I don't know if it's just me, but this song sounds like the theme song to like a 1970s like cop movie or TV show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
It's just, I don't know, the guitars, everything else. It's like this and is a song that whenever anybody talks about Unmasked, this is the song I always think of for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, it's just, I remember when I was like, you know, burned a copy of your album or whatever. I was listening to it on iTunes back then, and I was like, what the hell? Like, you know, I was like, what is this song, Naked City? And I thought it was going to be like, you know, it's still kind of sleazy because it's Gene, but like, I thought it was going to be like Plaster Caster, you know, sleazy. And it's just this weird, like, vocal range from Gene, and like, I don't know, this kind of like weird, sultry, like I said, like 70s cop drama theme.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm surprised, honestly, that, you know, you like that song as much as you did, because I've been listening to the album, and honestly, Naked City is like a song that I've passed over a few times, but going back through and listening to it again today, like, I can see why someone would find that song as catchy.
Yeah.
Not like you said, not necessarily like if I had a group of friends together and I was like, hey, I'm gonna show y'all some Kiss, I wouldn't cue up Naked City.
No,
but,
definitely. Yeah, that wouldn't be like, you guys want to get your minds blown off? Here's Naked City by Kiss.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like like you said, the vocals in this is just, I just feel like it's something you haven't heard from Gene before.
Yeah.
It was like he pulled it from like a completely different portion of his body.
Yeah.
And just came through with these vocals that were perfect for the song.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, just
it makes me think of like a montage of like New York City, looking through crime files, like walking down dark alleys and stuff.
Yeah. Like looking at like a crime, like unsolved crime, and just shaking your head, like, and then cutting to a guy, and it's like raining, and he's just like walking in the, whatever, and he looks in to like a pet shop, and there's a kitten there, and just like it's this whole weird 70s. I don't know why it's just like the 70s cop thing. I think it's the guitar, like the den 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 den, but I don't know. I feel like I'm crazy because I always said that, I thought my favorite singer in Kiss is Gene, because like when he's not doing the super cheesy stuff and he's doing a song like Naked City, which that sentence sounds insane, but like I think he's got like really good vocals when he turns it on.
Yeah.
And this is a song I think this is a song that I would use as an example of his really strong vocals. But moving along here, What Makes the World Go Round? Which is a weird title for a Kiss track. That's not what you would normally think of. Naked City is something you think Kiss would say, but not What Makes the World Go Round. Written by Paul, Vinny Poncia again. Sung by Paul. Paul plays lead on this one. The dude is a beast playing lead all throughout this album. I guess you get a nice little drum opening from Anton Fig. Again, but to me, I think it's just another standard Unmasked track. It's fine, catchy, not a lot of bite. Paul has some really nice range on this one, though, like not to be outdone by old Gene on Naked City. But again, it kind of sounds like a little Kisco era, like it sounds like something off Dynasty, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, because I think when Dynasty works really well, when it's firing on all cylinders, it's a pretty solid album for the most part. But what do you have to say about this old Paul track?
This is probably my like the most catchy song. I would say Shandy's my favorite, but like I was listening to this song nonstop today.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It's understanding kind of Kiss was trying to go for this like pop rock kind of groove on this album.
Yeah.
So like not expecting like a classic Kiss sound to it, but I don't know. Like there's just something about this song. Like I'll listen to it and it's just super catchy. Puts me in a good mood. I enjoy listening to this song a lot.
I think the chorus is really great. That's the best part of the song. When the chorus kicks in. Because I remember when I was listening to it, I was like, I don't remember really liking this track, but the chorus is solid. But no, I'm glad you dig this one, because it's cool that we have like some varying opinions on the songs, because it's definitely not my favorite on the track or on the album. But like I said, Paul Stanley knows how to write a chorus. The old Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, "Don't Bore Us, Get to the Chorus" thing is classic. Oh yeah, I wanted to say, this is totally fucking off topic, but this is one of the things I love about doing the podcast. Do you remember in Ted 2? Did you ever see Ted 2?
Yeah, I actually just watched it a couple weeks ago.
You remember this shit? This is so crazy. Okay, I don't know why I just thought of this, but I was coming home from work. Remember how like all throughout the movie, when they go to like a lawyer's office, like he sees candy and he asks for it, and they're like, "Oh, it's not supposed to be out." And then at the very end, they go and like Morgan Freeman's there, and he's like telling him all this stuff, and Mark Wahlberg's like, "So are those candies like for everyone or just for you?" And he goes, "I'm sorry, those aren't supposed to be out." And the look on Mark Wahlberg's face is like so much pain.
Yeah, dude. That you like remember like parts of movies that like were funny at the times, but like after you watch the movie, you're like, man, that movie was so funny, but I honestly couldn't quote a single line from that movie.
Yeah.
Like, had to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely one of the scenes like throughout the movie,
And
man.
the only reason it's so funny is because they keep doing it. Like they do it like 3 or 4 times, and they keep and like every time Mark Wahlberg gets more and more bummed out.
Oh yeah. Well, that's totally what's his name?
Seth MacFarlane.
That's totally a Seth MacFarlane thing, I feel like. Though.
Just to hit you with something that's not that funny at first, but like by the end, it's so goddamn funny. Like it's the funniest thing you've ever seen. But I don't know why I was thinking about that. You're just like, I'm sorry, those supposed to be out. And he's just like, are those candies for everyone? Anyway, back to Kiss. Next song, Tomorrow. Written by Paul and Vinny Poncia, sung by Paul. I hope I'm saying Poncia's name right, because I never actually read about him much in Kiss lore when I was like younger. It might be Poncia, I don't know, but Poncia, I think so. Again, lead by. I mean, I've been saying it for like 3 albums now, but lead by Paul again. He's laying it down like crazy. I think this is a really solid lead from him, one of his best on the album, actually. Paul also plays bass on this one. He's everywhere, man. Like Gene is again in the 80s. If you've ever read Paul Stanley's book, Face the Music, amazing book, probably the best Kiss book in my opinion. The 80s is when Gene starts to do like acting stuff, and he really drops the ball on Kiss, unfortunately. And Paul, I think, in his book even talks about it. And they're obviously good now, but I think their friendship really splintered a bit in the 80s. And I feel like this is the beginning of that, because Gene, if you look at it, like he's not really on this album very much. But again, I think this is What Makes the World Go Around is a better track than this. But again, just kind of like almost a filler track. It's just fine. It definitely not my favorite one on the album by any stretch of the imagination. And also, it's also the last single released for the album.
Yeah, I think I want to say I was reading something today, and Paul was saying that this was his favorite track from the album. And,
interesting.
And I could see why. I mean, it's.
He's everywhere on it,
Yeah, I mean, it's a catchy song. I think, although some like diehard Kiss fans might not totally agree with how this album was, like the sound that came from this album, but if Kiss was going for this pop rock thing that they were going for, then this song fits. Like it's like, hey, we want to do a pop rock album, but if they released an album that was like Destroyer, then it's like, okay, we like this album, but it's not pop rock.
Yeah.
So they were going for pop rock, and they succeeded in a pop rock album. I don't know if you remember in this song, there's like, and I was trying to remember where exactly it occurs, but there's like a part where there's like someone in the background, like clapping.
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah. So I think that was Peter Criss's like last contribution.
Yeah. Peter, get in and clap.
If you're no longer a member of Kiss anymore, please clap.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Peter Criss.
All right, man. Take it easy, Peter. See you in 15 years. Yeah. I mean, hand claps. That's a secret weapon in music that always makes the song a little bit better. But I mean, it's overall, not for me, not much to say about it. But I guess Paul was a big fan of it. But anyway, what I wanted to get to though. Was the next track, Two Sides of the Coin, written by Ace, sung by Ace. This is my favorite track on the album. And it's not just because I knew about this song before any of the other tracks. It's not really just because Ace wrote it. I just like the song the most. I think it's maybe not. I would say Ace's last song is actually the most fun, I think, on the album, but that anyone has. But I really like this song a lot. I love the ridiculous lyrics and rhyming scheme. It's classic simple Ace, like rhyming mate and date. Ace plays bass on this one too. So again, where is Gene, man? But I love also when Ace is like, choose one, and like it goes into the song.
Yeah.
Also, just a weird comic book thing. This song always reminded me of Two-Face, which is cool because he's like, one of my all-time favorite, just not even villains, just characters in comic books. I think it's just a rocking good track, man. I think it's a good time. Great drum work by Anton as well. But I don't know. What do you think of Two Sides of the Coin?
That's funny. I was going to mention the choose one.
Choose one.
Because I think of the three, we've already discussed Talk to Me, Two Sides of the Coin, then I won't give away the third Ace song until we get to it. But I think of the three, Two Sides of the Coin is my favorite. I think it's one of the better known tracks from this album.
Definitely.
And like you said, it's just Ace was just more confident in himself. I don't know if it's because they had done their solo albums or whatever, and he felt better through that. But I feel like he was just more confident in the tracks that he did for this album.
Yeah, no, I mean, it gets stronger and stronger, and the sad thing is that his time, like I said, his time in Kiss is ending, fairly soon. But I mean, I don't know. I've always liked this song, and I think maybe at the end of the day, there is part of the fact that like it is the song I've known the longest from the album, so there's a bit of nostalgia. But I just love it. Like there's like the whole like kind of like a key change thing going on. Anton's drumming, he's rolling all over the place. Solid lead from Ace, and I think it sounds the best on the whole album. You know what I mean? Like it sounds different than the other songs. Like it sounds it's got more of a crunch to it. Maybe that's Ace. Maybe I don't know what it was. Maybe they're just feeling good that day. But for me, definitely my favorite track on the album. Excuse me. But the next song is written by Gene and Vinnie Poncia, sung by Gene. What a weird title. I don't know why. Like I think we always just found this title hilarious. Like I feel like we would just randomly say it out loud. But it's She's So European, which is, I don't know, like just it's just out of all like the like Plaster Caster, all the others like weird titles by Gene, She's So European is just like the weirdest title for some reason for me from Gene.
Yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason this track always reminded me of, you remember in Dumb and Dumber?
Yeah.
When he's talking to that. Jim Carrey's character is talking to that girl in the beginning, and she's like, "Oh, I'm from Austria," and he thinks she's from Australia.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but like this, like that just reminds me of that. This song reminds me of that scene for whatever reason.
Yeah, man, it's just, what a weird, like I don't know why that means anything to Gene. I don't know. It's just like. It's catchy. I really don't have a lot to say about it, except it's just a weird song. It's just a weird song from Gene.
Yeah.
He's been absent for most of the album, and then he's got She's So European. So I don't know. But I guess I don't know. That move. Anyone who loves She's So European, shoot me a tweet or something like that, and let me know. It's fine. I mean, I don't think it's a terrible song. It's just for some reason that title. And the whole song and melody just a weird one. I don't know. Next one, Easy As It Seems, written by Paula and Vinnie Poncia, sung by Mr. Paul Stanley. Again, Paul Stanley plays lead on this track. The funky bass in the beginning, though, I'm sorry, all the Gene fans. I'm sorry, Mick. That funky bass in the beginning is Paul Stanley, not Gene Simmons. Because I mean that bass is funky, man. Like that bass, like is ripping. But it's again, it's kind of got that bleed over from the Kisco stuff from Dynasty.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's another fine one. I think it's up there with Tomorrow as just kind of a standard run of the mill Paul Stanley track, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I like the just since I made my attempts to be a bass guitarist in high school. I appreciate the intro with the bass at the beginning. I always thought that was kind of catchy. But I mean, again, it's not like it's not the best track, but it's also it's not something that is like terrible to listen to. So
no, I mean if it rolls over on this one to the next track, and it plays Easy As It Seems, that's fine. But it's not what I'm jumping to when I put the album on.
Right.
But speaking of funky basses and bass intros, this next track, I'm telling you right now, when you're done listening to this podcast, or you can stop right now, watch the Mad Max trailer, and then listen to Torpedo Girl off this album, because this song is fucking fun. Written by Ace and Vinnie Poncia, sung by Ace. It starts with like that nautical call to the battle station kind of thing, like a Yellow Submarine almost opening, which is unique for Kiss. You don't hear that really on any other track. But I will say again, to crush any Gene fans, I'm sorry, Mick, that bass is played by Ace, not Gene. But again, Ace and Anton have their great chemistry from working together on the solo album, and they eventually carry that over to the solo stuff that Ace would do with Fraley's Comet in the 80s. So a great, really tight opening and intro, really super catchy and really rock and roll, a lot of fun. I think Ace wins the gold star of this album. I think his input and his work on this album. His out of his 3 tracks, they're all solid. They're all great. And I feel like for whatever it may be, this band is firing on all cylinders on this track. Maybe the most out of all of them.
Yeah.
I also like there's that line where Ace is like, "Could this be a dream? I don't know." It's just like I remember like Chris Jericho, I think it was, who said like Ace Frehley sings with all the exuberance of an 8th grade algebra teacher. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, could this be a dream? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. But the riff on this one, which is fucking awesome, reminds me a lot of another Ace riff, Parasite, off of Hotter Than Hell.
Yeah.
So it's just an awesome song.
Well, who's the guy at the beginning? That's what I want to know. Is that Ace? Like
the guy who's talking?
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure. I mean, in a situation like that, either they like sampled it, or it's something where like the producer probably just said it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not Ace, because Ace would have been like full speed ahead. Well, let's go. I don't know. But Torpedo Girl is a song where I remember somebody was like, there's a great article like defending Unmasked. I think it came out last year for the 35th anniversary. And the guy was like, listen to Torpedo Girl. Like, that was like basically his thing. He had obviously other like well thought out facts and whatnot, but like Torpedo Girl is a great example to be like, you want to hear Kiss having a fucking good time, listen to Torpedo Girl off this album. But yeah, it's not something you're going to hear a lot from like Kiss compilations or albums or excuse me, live albums or anything like that. But I think it's a great rock and roll track.
Yeah.
That brings us to the last track on the album. You're All That I Want, written by Gene and Vinnie Poncia, sung by Gene. Gene does play rhythm guitar on this one. It does have a bit of that kind of vintage Gene crunch to it. I think Ace's his lead is pretty solid, and you get some nice vocals from Gene and Paul. But other than that, kind of a just a flat album closer in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's funny because I was reading something today again about, and Gene was saying that You're All That I Want was written around the same time as Love Gun.
Oh, really?
And I was thinking, Love Gun, and I might be completely wrong with this, but I love Gene. Like if Gene were listening to this, I hope he would want to like hang out with me one day. That would be like the ultimate.
Yeah.
But like You're All That I Want and Love Gun, I feel like are two like they're speaking about women and stuff like that. But Love Gun is like one extreme, and You're All That I Want's another. But not a terrible track. One that I've listened to before. I think I listened to it probably more when I was in high school, like as a pump up song to go talk to girls or something like that.
Love Guru, Gene Simmons.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like again, I don't. And a good way to kind of close out this whole episode as a whole, like I don't think there's any track on this album that's terrible. And I wouldn't even call this album I would never call this album a terrible album or horrible. I think it's got some really great pop, some great rock, some Kisco inspired stuff, but that makes it, in my opinion, a really solid pop rock album. It doesn't make it a great Kiss album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Paul Stanley's, if you type in Unmasked or, Kiss Unmasked or whatever for an album on Google anywhere, one of the first things that's going to pop out is that great little article about defending Unmasked 35 years later, but also the fact that Paul Stanley referred to it as a crappy album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, so like, look, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a terrible album. I don't think you think it's a terrible album. But it's okay. It's kind of we've been kind of slowly getting to the edge of the cliff though on the past couple albums. And anybody who's not aware of Kiss's career, would ask, well, can it get any worse? And the next album we're doing is Music from the Elder. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's an album that it definitely has its supporters. I think it dumbfounds Gene and Ace sometimes. It's the album that when Ace Frehley heard it, he smashed it against the wall and had a tear roll down his eye because he just hated it so much. And I think just as a tease, Paul, I think, has said something to the extent of, is it a great album? Yes. Is it a great Kiss album? No. And so we got a lot to talk about with that one next week. Any closing thoughts on Unmasked, Mick?
So just a few little facts and information that I found today that you haven't mentioned yet. So like you said, the original artwork for the album was done by Victor Stabin.
Yeah.
It's weird because he's famous for doing these very eloquent portrait stamps.
Yeah, the presidents, right?
Yeah, and then and then he's obviously done the cover for this Kiss album, but the original artwork, and I'm not sure when this was sold, but it sold for $14,000.
Damn.
So I mean, if that was back in the early '80s, that's a lot for back then. It's still a lot for now.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, so like we mentioned, they only performed one show on the tour for this album in the United States. That was in New York. Everything else was, in Europe or Australia. But I read in an article today, I'm not sure how true this is, but it's a pretty cool story if it is true. So they were playing a show in Italy, and the show was halted for about half hour or so because basically an upset fan decided to throw a Molotov cocktail at the band while they were playing on stage. And they said for the Kiss concerts, the stage was actually really kind of spongy and light, which helped the band members walk around in those big high heels.
Yeah.
So the cocktail pretty much hit the surface of the stage and kind of just sat there.
Oh, nice.
And nothing really happened. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
I mean, imagine if that fan had heard Music from the Elder.
Right?
He hadn't even heard that one yet.
Right. But yeah, just some interesting, information that I had no idea.
Yeah, man.
About Unmasked and found out today. So, it's Kiss is one of those bands that no matter, at least to me, no matter, how much I hear about them or, hear their music, hear about, stories about them, I always want to hear more. I wish someone would just do a, from day one till now documentary of just Kiss and follow those guys around. Cause I mean, the band itself, I mean, no matter what anyone says, there'll never be another band like Kiss.
Never. Never.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, man, if you haven't read it, and I sound like I say this every freaking episode, but it's true. Read Face the Music by Paul Stanley. It's if you haven't read that one yet, I know you had the Kiss biography and stuff, but if you the Face the Music by Paul Stanley is, I think, the most at times brutally honest on all fronts. But also he goes track by track. I mean, he has so much information about Kiss, and he's him and Gene are the only ones who are still around from day one. So if you ever want to get some really great information, Face the Music by Paul Stanley is a freaking fantastic book for any Kiss fan. who'll enjoy any of the stuff going on in it. But yeah, man, one of the reasons I'm glad to have you on is because you got that, that Kiss box set, which is fucking, as you said, ultimate, man. Like it's got everything you need in there. Really great, interesting facts. I always know you're going to do your homework. Have a lot of cool facts for me that I don't even know about. It's always a pleasure. One of my favorite things to do with this podcast is the fact that I get to have you on talking Kiss. So I appreciate you coming on. Definitely going to try to get you down the line here. It's going to be bleak with this Unmasked stuff later on because I'm not. One of the reasons I'm doing it is because I'm not super familiar with a lot of the Unmasked stuff, to be honest.
Yeah.
But maybe get you on for like Psycho Circus or something when I get to that one. Or if you want to jump on to any of the Unmasked stuff, the actual Unmasked stuff, let me know. But
yeah, definitely,
because we're still working those ones out. But dude, thanks for coming on. I always appreciate it.
yeah.
And remember, kids, rock and roll all night and party every day. Have a good night.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.